Thank you for your hard work today as well. This channel is a reading channel for sleeping. Today's story is the masterpiece of Kenji Miyazawa, The Night of the Galaxy Railroad. Lonely boy Giovanni and his friend Campanella go on a journey on the Galaxy Railroad. It is a gentle and sad story with the theme of true happiness. Please immerse yourself in the world of the story. On this channel, I am reading stories that can be slept on. I would be happy if you could subscribe to the channel before you go. From now on, I would like to receive requests from viewers and read the stories you want to hear as much as possible. If you have any stories you want to hear, I would be happy if you could request them in the comments section. Good night. Good night. The Night of the Galaxy Railroad Kenji Miyazawa Lesson 1, in the afternoon, Lesson 1, Lesson 2, Lesson 3, Lesson 4, Lesson 5, Lesson 6, Lesson 7, Lesson 8, Lesson 9, Lesson 10, Lesson 11, Lesson 12, Lesson 13, Lesson 14, Lesson 15, Lesson 16, Lesson 17, Lesson 17, Lesson 20, Lesson 21, Lesson 22, Lesson 23, Lesson 23, Lesson 24, Lesson 25, Lesson 27, Lesson 27, Lesson 28, Lesson 30, Lesson 31, Lesson 32, Lesson 33, Lesson 34, Lesson 35, Lesson 36, Lesson 37, Lesson 38, Lesson 40, Lesson 41, Lesson 42, Lesson 43, Lesson 51, Lesson 19. Giovanni also tried to raise his hand and hurriedly quit as it was. Certainly, he read it in a magazine that everyone wanted, but at that time, Giovanni was sleepy even in the classroom every day, and he had no time to read books, so he felt that he didn't know anything. However, the teacher said, he found it soon. Giovanni said, "You know, don't you?" Giovanni stood up vigorously, but when he stood up, he could no longer answer it clearly. Zanelli looked back from the previous seat, and he looked at Giovanni and laughed. Giovanni was already drooping. The teacher said again, "If you investigate the galaxy 7 times using a big telescope, what kind of galaxy is it? It's a star, after all." The teacher was in trouble for a while, but he turned his eyes toward Campanella and named him Campanella-san. Then Campanella, who raised her hand so vigorously, stood up again, and still could not answer. The teacher was looking at Campanella for a while unexpectedly, but he was in a hurry and said, and pointed to the map himself. "If you look at this dimly white galaxy with a large telescope, you can see many small stars. Isn't that so, Giovanni-san?" Giovanni nodded and read. But one day, Giovanni's eyes were filled with tears. "That's right, I knew it. Of course, Campanella knows it too. That was in one of the magazines that I read with Campanella's father, the professor of Campanella. But that was not all. When Campanella read the magazine, he brought a large book from his father's bookshop and spread the place called the Galaxy, and they always saw beautiful pictures full of black pages and white dots. The pictures considered stars, and the old idea became new. He couldn't go in, he didn't know where the drawing was. Even after he finished with the drawing, he was moved by the result. Back then, there was nothing left for Campanella to write. But his mother came home. So Campanella knew it and was disappointed and did not answer on purpose. When I think about it, I and Campanella felt so pitiful that I couldn't help but feel pitiful. So I said again. "So if you really think that this river is a river, then each small star will hit the sand and gravel at the bottom of the river. And if you think of this as a big flow of the Father, then if you think of this as a big flow of the Father, then if you think of this as a big flow of the Father, then if you think of this as a big flow of the Father, then if you think of this as a big flow of the Father, it will become a normal flow. Your thoughts will disappear, and you will remember it. So let's think of it as purple. Like this. It becomes white and dark blue and brown. And you then remember. In other words, we are also living in the water of the Amano River. And when we look at the horizon from the water of the Amano River, we can see that just as deep as the water looks blue, as deep and distant as the bottom of the Amano River, there are many stars. Therefore, it looks white and dim. Take a look at this model. The teacher put a lot of sand in it, and he pointed a large double-sided magnifying lens. The shape of the Amano River is just like this. I think that these shining particles are the same as our sun, and that they are the stars that are shining on their own. Our sun is almost in the middle of this, and the sun is shining on its own. The earth is right next to it. Everyone, stand in the middle of this at night, and look around at the inside of this lens. This one has a thin lens, so only a few shining particles, that is, only stars, can be seen. This one and this one have thick lenses, so only a few shining particles, that is, only a few stars, can be seen. The distant one looks white. This is the theory of the galaxy today. Then, how big is this lens, and how many stars are there in it, and why are they so small? I will talk about it in the next week's time. Well, since today is the festival of the galaxy, everyone, please go outside and look at the sky. That is all. Please close your books and notebooks. And the whole classroom was full of sounds of opening and closing the desk lid for a while, but soon everyone stood up and bowed and went out of the classroom. 2. Classroom. When Giovanni went out of the school gate, 7 or 8 of the same group gathered in the middle of Campanella without going home and at the place of the cherry tree in the corner of the classroom. It seemed that they were going to pick up the cranes to go to the river with the blue light in the Star Festival tonight. But Giovanni waved his hand and came out of the school gate. 3. Classroom. Then, at the house of the town, they were preparing various things, such as hanging each leaf ball in the Festival of the Galaxy tonight, lighting the firewood branches, and so on. 4. Classroom. Giovanni did not go home. He went around the town 3 times. 5. Classroom. When he entered the large bookcase, he bowed to the person wearing a white shirt who was at the counter at the entrance and bowed, and when Giovanni took off his shoes, he opened the big door at the end of the month. 6. Classroom. There was still a lantern in the middle of the day. At that time, many lanterns were spinning around and around, and people who tied their heads and put on lampshades were reading and counting to sing something, and they were working a lot. 7. Classroom. Giovanni went to the person sitting at the high table on the 3rd floor right from the entrance and bowed. 8. Classroom. After looking for a shelf for a while, he said, "I wonder if I can pick up this much." He gave me a piece of paper. 9. Classroom. Giovanni took out a small flat box from the foot of the person's table and crouched down on the corner of the wall where there were many lanterns on the other side, and with small tweezers, he began to pick up a bunch of paper like bubbles from time to time. 10. Classroom. He started picking up more and more. 11. Classroom. He started picking up more and more. 12. Classroom. A person with a blue chest passed behind Giovanni and said, "Yo, Mushi Megan-kun. Good morning." When he said that, 4 or 5 people nearby laughed coldly without saying a word or looking this way. 12. Classroom. Giovanni was staring at it many times as he picked up the paper. 13. Classroom. It was a while after 6 o'clock. 14. Classroom. Giovanni put a large amount of paper in the box he picked up. 15. Classroom. The messy box was pulled together with the paper he had in his hand again, and then he finished it with a single laugh. And then brought it to the person at the table just now. The person quietly accepted it and nodded slightly. When Giovanni nodded, he opened the door and came to the calculation table just now. Then, the person wearing the white clothes just now, after all, quietly handed over a small silver coin to Giovanni. Giovanni's face became better and better, and when he nodded politely, he jumped out with a bag under the table. Then, while smiling cheerfully, he ran to the bakery and bought a piece of bread and a bag of brown sugar. Then, he ran to the bakery and bought a bag of brown sugar. Rn3. Uchi. Giovanni hurriedly returned to a small house in the back of a town. On the far left of the 3-lined entrances, there was a purple kale and asparagus in an empty box, and on the 2 small windows, a pomegranate was still sitting in the jam. Rn4. The piano. The pomegranate was in neutral mode and the pomegranate was smiling. The pomegranate people were very happy, powerfully said. Rn3. Family. The family has 1 child, 2 daughters, a father and his daughter, and behind the curtain of the manor, there is a chimney. Giovanni went up the front door, and Giovanni's mother was resting in the room right at the entrance, covered with a white cloth. Giovanni opened the window. "Mother, I bought brown sugar today. I thought I'd put it in the milk. Oh, you go first. I don't want it yet. Mother, when did your sister go home? Oh, when did she go home? I went home around 3 o'clock. Everyone did their thing. I wonder if your mother's milk came. I wonder if it didn't come. I'll go and get it. Oh, I can take it easy. You go first. My sister took something with tomatoes and left it there. Then I'll eat it. Giovanni took a plate of tomatoes from the window and ate it with bread for a while. Oh, it's okay, eh? Hey, Mom. I think your father will be back soon. Oh, I think so too. But why do you think so? Oh, because in this morning's newspaper, this year, it was written that the amount in the north was very good. Oh, but my father may not have gone to the dormitory. I'm sure he's out. There's no way my father did such a bad thing as going to prison. My father brought it to me the other day. It's a big crab shell that was donated to the school. It's the horn of the tuna sea. Even now, everyone is in the sample room. When I was in the 6th grade, the teacher would take me to the classroom. My father said, "Next time, I'll take you to the classroom." I said that my dad would bring me a rag. Everyone says that to me. I say it like I'm giggling. Am I bad to you? Yeah. But Campanella never says that. When Campanella says that to everyone, that's why my father took me with him to Campanella's house. He was a friend of my father since he was a child, just like you guys. Ah, that's why my father took me with him to Campanella's house. It was good at that time. On the way home from school, I often went to Campanella's house. In Campanella's house, there was a train running with an alcohol lamp. When the 7 rails were combined, they became round, and there was a light bulb and a traffic light, and the light of the traffic light became blue only when the train passed. One day, when the alcohol was gone, I used the oil, and the kiln was completely empty. I see, eh? Now I go to the newspaper every morning. But the whole house is still empty. Because it's early. There is a dog called Zal. Its tail is like a broom. When I go, it wrings its nose and follows me. It follows me all the way to the corner of the town. Sometimes it follows me more. Tonight, everyone will go to the river to pour the light of the cranes. I'm sure the dog will follow me. That's right. Tonight is the festival of the galaxy. Yes, I will watch while taking milk. Oh, go ahead. Don't go into the river. Oh, I just watch from the shore. I'll be there in an hour. Come play more. If you're with Campanella, I'm not worried. Ah, I'm sure it's the same. Mother, shall I close the window? Ah, it's already cool. Giovanni stands up and closes the window. When I clean up the plates and bread bags, I put on my shoes vigorously and say, I'll be back in an hour and a half. I came out of the dark door. 4. The night of the Festival of Centaurs. Giovanni has a lonely mouth that seems to be whistling, and he came down the hill of the town lined up in the pitch black of the firewood. Under the hill, there was a big street light, and it was standing in a blue and splendid light. When Giovanni went down the traditional way, Giovanni's shadow hat, which had been pulled back for a long time like a monster, gradually became dark and black, and he raised his legs and waved his hands. He turned to the side of Giovanni. I'm a fine locomotive. It's fast here because it's an auction. I'm going through that tradition now. That's right. This time my shadow hat is a compass. I came to the front by turning around like that. While Giovanni was thinking, when he passed under the streetlight, suddenly Zanelli in the daytime wore a new collar-shaped shirt, and came out of the dark construction on the other side of the streetlight, and passed by Giovanni. Zanelli, are you going to sell crows? Before Giovanni said that, Giovanni, your father is going to give you a rag. As if the child threw it at him, he shouted from behind. Giovanni's chest became cold, and I thought it was going to be cold all over there. What is it, Zanelli? Giovanni shouted loudly, but Zanelli was already in the house over there. Why does Zanelli say that even though I don't do anything? When I run, it's like a mouse. Even though I don't do anything, it's because Zanelli is an idiot. Giovanni thought about a lot of things, and he passed through the city, which was beautifully decorated with various lights and tree branches. The clock shop had a bright neon light, and every second, the red eyes of the crows, which were covered with stones, moved round and round. Various jewels were colored like the sea, riding on a thick sheet of glass, and slowly circling like a star. Also, from the other side, the domes were slowly coming and going around the city. In the middle of the domes, there was a round, black crescent moon, decorated with blue asparagus leaves. Giovanni forgot about himself and looked at the picture of the crescent moon. He was surprised by the circumference of the red crescent moon. When he noticed, there were lunar rays remaining. His point was that the blue and black crescents were most blue and beautiful. Giovanni could tell the reason why it injured him, so he put his hands in his mouth, and his legs were cut and going. After looking at the scene, it looked like it was blowing in the steam, and it exploded slightly below it, and it looked like it was rising even in the steam. Also, behind it was a small telescope with 3 legs shining yellow. On the wall at the very back, there was a large figure with mysterious animals, snakes, fish, and bottles on it. Is there really a scorpion like this in the sky? Oh, I was standing there for a while, thinking that I wanted to walk as far as I could, and then I suddenly remembered the milk of my mother, and I left the shop early in the morning. And while I was worried about my cramped jacket, I still put my chest on purpose and waved my hand big and went through the town. The air was clear, and it flowed through the street and the shop as if it were water, and the street lights were all bright blue. The street lights were all bright blue. The street lights were all bright blue. The trees near the shop or the eye opened the window, and once again, 6 leaves of platinum, as heterogeneous as that. The children were wearing kimonos with new dresses. The children were wearing kimonos with new dolls. He wore a kimono with a long collar and whistled around the stars, and he shouted and ran, and he was playing happily with the blue magnesium fireworks. But Giovanni had a deep concern again one day, and he was rushing to the milkman's house while thinking about something completely different from its radiance. Giovanni had a poplar tree out of town one day, and it was floating high in the starry sky, and he entered the black gate of the milkman's house, and he stood in front of the thin kitchen where the smell of cows was. Giovanni took off his hat and said, "Good evening." In the house, there was no one, and there seemed to be no one. "Good evening." "I'm sorry." Giovanni stood up straight and shouted again. Then, after a while, a woman who was older came out of the house, and she seemed to be in a bad mood, and she came out soon, and she said something in her mouth. That day, the milk didn't come to me, so I went to get it. Giovanni said vigorously and vigorously. I had a bad feeling about it, so I went to see him again. Giovanni looked at me and said, "What? Now I don't have any milk. Please give me tomorrow." He rubbed the bottom of his red eyes and looked down at me. "My mother is sick, so I have to be worried if she's not here tonight. Then, please come back after a little while." That person seemed to have already left. "Is that so? Then, thank you." Giovanni peed and came out. When he tried to turn the corner of the street at 10 o'clock, in front of the grocery store on the other side of the bridge, a black shadow and a dimly white shirt were messed up, and 6 or 7 students whistled and laughed, and I saw them coming with the light of a glass. Their laughter and whispers were all familiar to everyone. They were the children of Giovanni's classmate. Giovanni was about to go back, but when he thought about it again, he walked over there vigorously. "Are you going to the river?" When Giovanni tried to say something, and when he thought that his throat was a little clogged, "Giovanni, a ragged coat is coming." The little boy shouted again. "Giovanni, a ragged coat is coming." Immediately everyone continued to scream. Giovanni turned red, and he was already walking, but when he tried to go too fast, there was Campanella in it. Campanella seemed to be upset, and he quietly laughed a little, and he looked at Giovanni's cheeks as if he were not angry. Giovanni avoided his eyes as if he were running away, and soon after the high-pitched form of Campanella passed, everyone whistled at that point. When he turned the corner of the street, he looked back, and Zanelli was still looking back. And Campanella also whistled loudly, and he looked over there, and he walked to the end of the bridge, which looked haphazardly over there. Giovanni became lonely without saying anything, and he suddenly started running. Then he put his hand on his ear, and while saying, "The little children," who were jumping with one foot, thought that Giovanni was funny and could write, and shouted. Soon after, Giovanni rushed to the Black Hill. 5. The pillar of the sky behind the ranch was a loose hill, and its black flat top looked dimly and lower than usual under the northern Big Bear star. At first, it looked like a small forest, but as the fog began to fall, it became a small forest. Then, he climbed up the small path that was already covered with fog. He climbed up the small path that was already covered with fog. He climbed up the small path that was already covered with fog. The small place there was a little, small hut, though it might not be worth seeing. The mud, full of weeds from the grass, was filled with green and blue air, and the gospels of former cities were replaced with fresh grass, to symbolize the phenomena of the insert until dawn Ophix in particular. When they crossed the forest of Nara, the sky suddenly opened, and they could see that the Amono River was flowing from the south to the north, and they could also see the pillars of the Tinkiran of Itadaki. The flowers of Tsuruginso or Nogikuso bloomed on one side of the ground, as if they had started to smell even from the inside of a dream, and one bird continued to cry on the hill as it passed by. Giovanni came under the pillars of the Tinkiran of Itadaki, and he threw his throbbing body into the cold grass. The city lights lit up in the darkness as if they were the scenery of the Omiya at the bottom of the sea, and the singing voices and whispers of the children and the screaming voices of the children could be heard faintly. The wind blew far away, and the grass on the hill swayed quietly, and Giovanni's sweaty shirt was also coldly cooled. Giovanni looked across the far black open field from the outskirts of the town. From there he heard the sound of a train. The small window of the train looked small and red in a row, and there were many travelers in it. When Giovanni thought that they were smiling, looking at apples, and doing various things, he became sad without saying anything, and again he looked up at the sky. Everyone says that the white sky is a star. However, no matter how much I look at it, the sky is like what the teacher said in the afternoon, and I can't help but think that it's a cold, empty place. It's not just that, but the more I look at it, it's like a small forest or a ranch, like a field. And Giovanni saw a blue star, and he said, the blue star became 3 or 4, and it fluttered, and its legs came out and pulled in many times, and finally it grew long like a mushroom. Also, right under his eyes, I thought it looked like a pile of stars, or like a big smoke. 6. The galaxy station, and in the beginning, right behind it, there was a pillar of a rainbow, and one day, it became a shape of a triangular table, and for a while, like a firefly, it was blinking and disappearing, and I saw it. It became clearer and clearer, and finally it stopped moving, and it stood on the outskirts of the dark sky. 7. The galaxy station, it was standing straight on the outskirts of the sky, like a blue steel board, which had just been baked. 8. The galaxy station, then, somewhere, a mysterious voice said, the galaxy station, the galaxy station, the galaxy station, the galaxy station, the galaxy station. I wondered what it was, and now the right in front of me suddenly became bright, and like in 108 million fireflies, it made all of a sudden into a fossil wood. This filled the sky with a special feeling. 9. The Diamond Company, at the Diamond Company, to keep the price for the inside priceless, I pretended not to take it. It became bright in front of my eyes as if someone had suddenly turned over the gemstone hidden behind it, and I rubbed my eyes many times without thinking about it in the beginning. When I noticed, the small train that Giovanni was on was running from time to time. Giovanni was really sitting outside the window, looking out from the window, in the small yellow light-colored train room of the Night Guard Railway. In the train room, there were 2 big brass buttons shining on the wall painted with a mouse-colored varnish, as if it were a patterned wall with a blue billowed waistband. Right in front of the seat, I put on a black jacket as if it were wet. When I looked out of the window, I noticed a tall child looking out of the window with his head out of the window. And I felt like I had seen the shoulders of that child before. When I thought about it, I couldn't help but want to know who it was. Suddenly, when I was about to take my face out of the window, the child suddenly pulled his head back and looked at me. It was Campanella. Giovanni said, Campanella, have you been here before? When I was about to say that, Campanella said, everyone ran a lot, but they were late. Zanelli also ran a lot, but he couldn't catch up. He said. Giovanni said, that's right. We just invited him to go out with us. While thinking that, Let's wait somewhere. He said. Then Campanella said, Zanelli has already returned. My father came to pick me up. Campanella said, for some reason, my face is a little bluish, it seemed like it was painful somewhere. Then Giovanni, somehow there is something forgotten somewhere, I had a strange feeling, I was silent. However, Campanella, looking out the window, I was completely fine, he said vigorously. Oh, damn it. I forgot the water bottle. I forgot the sketchbook, too. But I don't care. Because it's the stop of the swan soon. I really like to see swans. Even if I fly far away from the river, I can see for sure. And Campanella, he looked at the map that looked like a round board, he turned it around and looked at it. In the middle of it all, along the left bank of the River of Heaven, which is white, the railroad on the first street, to the south, he was going to follow. Then, he looked at the map. And, the beautiful thing about the map is, on a black board like at night, each stop sign, triangle, waterfalls and forests, blue, diamond, green, it was scattered with beautiful light. At the beginning, I somehow saw that map somewhere. Where did you buy this map? It's made of obsidian. Giovanni said. I got it at the Galaxy Station. Didn't you get it? Oh, did I pass through the Galaxy Station? Now, this is where we are, right? Giovanni pointed to the north of the stop sign, which is written as a swan. That's right. Oh, is that River Tsukio? It was written on that map. You see, there's a boat floating on his map. And, on a sail. Coast in the hay, no, while saying to Giovanni, he became so happy that he wanted to jump up, and he knocked on his feet, and he took his face out of the window, and while blowing the whispers of the stars high and high, he stretched out hard and tried to see through the water of the Amano River, but at first it was not clear how to do it, but as I gradually became more and more careful, the beautiful water flowed through more than glass and more than hydrogen, and sometimes the color of the eyes, or the fine purple waves, or the rainbow-like glittering light. While talking, it was flowing silently, and the triangle sign of the forest was standing beautifully on both the shore and the other side. The distant is small, the close one is large, and the distant one is clear in red and yellow, and the distant one is clear in red. The distant one is small, the close one is large, and the distant one is clear in red and yellow. The close ones are a little bluish in color, or triangular, or square, or in the shape of lightning or medicine, and they are lined up in various ways, and the fields are full of light. Giovanni was so excited that he shook his head. Then, all the beautiful fields, blue and big, and various shining triangles, were shaking and shaking like they were breathing in the sky. Giovanni said, I have already come to the fields of heaven. And this train is not burning coal. Giovanni put out his left hand and looked out the window. It's alcohol or electricity, isn't it? Campanella said. Then, little by little, the small and beautiful train was running in the wind of the sky, in the water of the Amano River, and in the blue and blue light of the triangle. Then, all the beautiful fields, blue and big, and various shining triangles, were shaking and shaking like they were breathing in the sky. Giovanni said, I have already come to the fields of heaven. And this train is not burning coal. It's alcohol or electricity, isn't it? Campanella said. Then, little by little, the small and beautiful train was running in the wind of the sky. It's alcohol or electricity, isn't it? Kind of a beautiful sound, as if it were crying. It was a shiny and yet deep sound, raining flowers over the sky. If I had a bicycle, I would be happy. My memory seems like to me the goose that out of people's home in my childhood was wrong. Now, why don't I have a bicycle? He stopped saying, for example, that motorcycle. It's a little sad if a motorcycle is like that you don't want to thumbs up often. I can't take it anymore. I've gone so far behind. Before Campanella could say that, the next flower of the forest road shone a lot and passed by. When I thought about it, from the next to the next, a cup of flower of the forest road with a lot of yellow bottom passed in front of me like it was raining. The triangle line finally shone like it was smoking and burning. 7. The North Cross and the Priacine Coast Mother, will you forgive me? Suddenly, Campanella said as if she had made up her mind. At first, she said, oh, That's right. My mother is around the triangle line with a large, which looks like a distant, single dust. She was thinking about me now. I was thinking, but I was quiet. 8. The North Cross and the Priocene Coast Mother, will you forgive me? I will do anything if my mother is really blessed. But what sort of thing will be the best blessing for my mother? 9. Nonetheless, isn't your mother is not a terrible thing, is she, B? Giovanni was surprised and shouted. I don't know, but it's the best thing for anyone to do something really good. So I think my mother will forgive me. Campanella seemed to be really determined about something. Suddenly, the inside of the car became bright. When I looked at it, it was already true. On top of the shiny silver riverbed, where the water flows silently and formlessly, and in the middle of the flow, I could see an island with 5 blue and red lights. The sound of the island. On top of the slender island, there was a white cross that woke up a great eye, and it was already, I wish I could say that it was a frozen northern cloud, I received the golden light that passed through it, and it stood quietly forever. Hallelujah, hallelujah. There was a voice from both the front and the back. Looking back, the travelers in the car room were all straight, with their kimonos hanging down, with their black Bibles on their chests, with their crystal beads on their chests, and with their fingers clasped together, and praying to the Lord. The 2 of them stood up straight, as if they had no intention of doing so. The campanella was like a mature forest. It shone beautifully, like the apple of the apple tree. And the island and the cross gradually moved backwards. The other side of the island was also blue, and it was glowing with smoke. Sometimes Suzuki was in the wind. Sometimes Suzuki was in the wind. It seemed that Suzuki was in the wind. Suddenly, the silver was smoked, and it looked like it could breathe. Also, it was thought that a lot of linden flowers were hiding and coming out of the grass like gentle foxes. For just a little while, between the river and the train, Suzuki was surrounded by a row of lindens. For just a little while, Suzuki was surrounded by a row of lindens. The island of the swans was seen twice in the back, but soon it was already far away, and became like a small picture. And again, the lindens started to make noise, and finally, it was completely invisible. And finally, it was completely invisible. Behind Giovanni, the tall and tall Catholic lindens, who are dressed in black, mate, who straightened his green supervillain suit and almost lost sight of Suzuki, seemed to be listening and listening. The travelers quietly returned to their seats and gently talked to each other in different words about their new feelings, which were similar to the sadness in their hearts. It's almost the stopping of a swan. Oh, it's almost 11 o'clock. The green light of the signal and the dimly white pillar passed through the window, and then the dimly light in front of the ironing machine, which was dimly like a flame of a fire, passed through the window. The train became more and more gentle, and soon a series of platforms appeared beautifully and regularly, and they grew bigger and bigger, and the 2 stopped at the big clock in front of the swan stop. At the dial of the refreshing autumn clock, 2 blue burned steel needles clearly pointed to 11 o'clock. Everyone got off at once, and the inside of the car was empty. It stopped for 20 minutes. And, under the clock, it was written. Shall we get off? Giovanni said. Let's get off. The 2 jumped up at once, jumped out the door, and ran to the ticket gate. However, at the ticket gate, there was only one bright purple light, and no one was there. Even when I looked around, there was no shadow of a stationer or a red-haired person. The 2 were surrounded by a small square, which looked like a crystal art, in front of the stop. Then, they went out to a small square. From there, a wide road went straight through the blue light of the galaxy. The people who got off first could not see where they had gone. The 2 lined up their shoulders and looked around. The shadow of the 2 was just like the shadow of 2 pillars in the room with a window in the square, and like the arrow of 2 wheels, going out to the square one by one. And soon after, they came to a beautiful river that was visible from the station. Campanella took a pinch of that beautiful sand, spread it on his palm, and set it like a dream while kissing it with his fingers. This sand is all crystal. A small fire is burning inside. That's right. Where did I learn that? While thinking about it, Giovanni was answering in a daze. The pebbles of the river were all transparent, and they certainly represented crystals and topaz, as well as the crumbling end, as if they were floating in the air. The pebbles of the river were all transparent, as if they were floating in the air. The pebbles of the river were all transparent, as if they were floating in the air. And his hands were bronze hands. I wonder if he could achieve a painting like that. His hands were painting nice tears. But what was certainly flowing was that the place where they dived into the water on their wrists seemed to float a little in the color of the water, silver, and the waves that hit their wrists raised a beautiful rainbow and looked like they were burning. Looking at the riverbed, there was a white rock under the cliff where a lot of bamboo was growing, and it came out flatly along the river as if it were a sports field. There was a small shadow of 5 or 6 people there, and it seemed that they were digging or filling something up, and they were standing or crouching, and sometimes some of the tools were shining brightly. "Let's go!" The two of them shouted at each other and ran that way. At the entrance to the place where the white rock became, a smooth sandstone called the Pryushan coast stood, and a thin iron railing was planted on the other side of the stream, and a beautiful wooden bench was also placed. "Oh, there's something strange." Campanella stopped mysteriously and picked up something like a black, thin, long, pointed walnut tree from the rock. "It's a walnut tree. There are so many in the sky. It's not flowing. It's in the rock. It's big. This walnut is twice as big. This one is not damaged at all. Let's go over there quickly. I'm sure they're digging something." The two of them, holding the black walnut tree in their hands, went closer to the one just now. On the left-hand side, the waves were burning like a gentle lightning, and on the right-hand side, it was shaking as if it was covered with silver or shellfish. As they approached closer and closer, a scholar wearing long-sleeved shoes, wearing a pair of high-quality gold glasses, and wearing long-sleeved shoes, a scholar wearing a pair of high-quality gold glasses, was writing something on his notebook, waving a pickaxe, and using a scope. The three of them were like female scholars, and they were so absorbed in their work that they were drawing a lot. In order not to break that special skill, they had to use a scope. A scope. "Oh, I'm going to dig a little further." "No, no. Why are you so violent?" When they looked at it, from the white soft rock, there was a huge, huge, blue-yellow beast bone, and it fell to the side and collapsed, and it was dug out more than half of it. And when they looked at it carefully, there was a stone with 2 footprints on it, and it was all square and heavy, and it was cut off beautifully, and there was a number on it. 2 footprints on it. Though, Serpent King thinks that it's all in one piece. The Order of Hearing Mind makes a point of it, but Algernon finds out that he's hurting humans. All we know is that it's cut, and it comes with a blow to our flesh. It's almost, all parched, and perished, all with your heat. This is 1.2 million years ago. After the 3rd century, it was a beach. There is also a shell from below. Now, where the river is flowing, salt water was drawn and drawn. Is this a beast? This is a boss. Hey, hey! There is a pickaxe. Please do it carefully. Say boss. There used to be a lot of cattle ancestors. Are you making a sample? No, I'm in the light. From our point of view, this is a hot and beautiful place. There are various evidence that it was made about 1.2 million years ago. Even if you look at it from a different point of view from us, after all, whether it looks like this, or whether it looks like the wind or the water, or whether it looks like the clear sky. Did you understand? However, hey, it's not a scope. There should be a skull buried right below it. The university professor rushed to run. "It's time. Let's go," Campanella said, comparing the map and the wristwatch. "Oh, then, excuse us," Giovanni politely told the university professor. "Is that so?" "No, goodbye." The university professor was busy again. "I started directing by walking around here and there." The two of them ran on the white rock so hard that they wouldn't be late for the train. And they really ran like the wind. I couldn't breathe and my knees didn't get hot. That's what was disadvantaging. If you can run like this, even if you can run around the world, I thought Giovanni. And the two of them sat in the seat of the original car room and looked from the window at the person who had just left. 8? The man who takes the bird. 9? Can I call you here? 10? I heard a rustling but kind-looking adult voice behind the two of them. 11? It was a little yellow, ruffled street lamp with white stripes. He was a man with a red beard on his back. Yes, please. Giovanni bowed his shoulders a little and greeted him. He laughed a little in his beard and slowly put his luggage on the shelf. Giovanni felt something very lonely and sad, and when he looked at the clock in front of him silently, there was something like a glass wand in front of him, and there was something like a glass wand in front of him. The train was already moving quietly. Campanella was looking at the ceiling of the train room from time to time. One of the lights was stopped by a black beetle, and the shadow was reflected greatly on the ceiling. The red-bearded man was laughing something nostalgic, and he was looking at Giovanni and Campanella. The train was getting faster and faster, and it shone from the outside of the door of the river and the changing window. The red-bearded man said, and the red-bearded man asked the two of them, while hesitating a little. Where are you going? I'm going anywhere. Giovanni replied a little indecisively. That's good. This train actually goes anywhere. Where are you going? Campanella suddenly asked like a quarrel, so Giovanni laughed unintentionally. Then he put on a sharp hat in the seat over there, and the person who put on a big key on his waist glanced at him and laughed, so Campanella also made his face red and laughed. However, that person did not get angry at all, and answered with a honk. I'm right there. I'm in the business of catching birds. It's a crane and a hen. It's a thief and a swine. Are there a lot of cranes? There are. I've been crying for a while. Didn't you ask? No. Can't you hear me now? Come on, listen carefully. The two raised their eyes and listened. The sound of the train and the wind of the stream made me hear the sound of the water flowing. There were 3 cranes in total, and I me? Thank you. I-ale. Good evening. 1 minute. Is Doshita. Sir? Do you want to take the crane? Suru? Or's the fraud? Everyone can do it because the sand on the Amano River is muddy and soft. And we go back to the river all the time. I'm waiting on the riverbank, and when all the sages come down with their feet like this, I hold it down while it doesn't stick to the ground. Then the sages will be solidified, relieved, and die. The rest is already clear. I'll just make it a Shiba. Are you going to make a sage into a Shiba? Is it a sample? It's not a sample. Isn't everyone going to eat it? That's strange. Campanella shrugged his neck. There's nothing strange or suspicious about it. That's right. The man stood up, put down the bag from the net, and quickly untied it. Now, look. It's a Shiba. It's a Shiba. Now it's alive. It's a Shiba. They're alive, why? Just a Shiba. It's alive. Also alive. Even though it was just a Shiba, a lot, that's right. It's alive, too, yes, it's alive, too. Watley, what animations? Yes, it's alive, but only alive. It's dead if it's still alive. Yo, that's alright, YA. Also alive. Why is it colorless? Calm down. They were lined up in a row. You're closing your eyes. Campanella gently touched the white closed eyes of a phoenix-shaped scythe with her fingers. There was also a white scythe like a spear on her head. Right? Isn't that right? Tori piled up the phoenix-shaped scythe again and wrapped it in a string. Who on earth would eat a scythe here? Giovanni thought as he listened. Is the scythe delicious? Yes, yes. There are orders every day. However, the liver is more popular. The liver is always in good shape, and there are not many of them. That's right. Tori again unwrapped the other side. Then, the liver, which shone like some kind of light, became a tree, a greenery, and a scythe. Just like the scythe just now, it was lined up with its beak and became a little flatter. You can eat this soon. How is it? Please go up a little. Tori lightly pulled the yellow leg of the liver. Then, as if it were made of chocolate, it slipped away beautifully. How is it? Have a little taste. Tori tore it into 2 and gave it to him. Giovanni ate a little and said, What? After all, this is a candy. It's more delicious than chocolate, but this cancer is flying. This man is a cashier somewhere in Nohara. but I made fun of this person, but eating this person's sweets is very disgusting. I thought, but I was still eating it. Have a little more. Tori took out the wrapping again. Giovanni wanted to eat more, but he couldn't. However, he said, yes, thank you. He said that and hesitated. Tori this time gave it to the person who had the key to the other seat. No, I'm sorry to get a business item. The person took off his hat. No, thank you. How is it? This year's Tori cake. No, it's wonderful. The day before yesterday, why did you ask me to tell you the day of the lighthouse other than the rules? Because of this woman. Oh, well, this is best Anko Row is waiting for you every day. It is difficult to say. It doesn't really matter at all. Either here, or here. There was a burnt at the moment of returning the phone, but I thought. Not me to do it. It can't be helped that I brought it with me. I told him to wear a ragged coat and go to Taisho, which is not far from the foot and mouth, but ha ha ha. As Suzuki died, a light came from the other side. Why do you have a lot of rags? Campanella has been thinking about asking since a while ago. That's to eat the rags. Tori turned over here. In the light of the water on the Amano River, I wonder if I'll hang it for 10 days. Otherwise, I have to put it in the sand for 34 days. Then the water silver will evaporate and be eaten. This is not a bird. It's just a snack. After all, I was thinking the same thing. Campanella asked as if he had made up his mind. Tori seemed to be in a hurry. That's right, I have to get off here. I stood up and thought I had taken my luggage. I couldn't see it anymore. Where did I go? The two looked at each other's faces. Todai Mori smiled and smiled. While trying to grow up a little, I looked outside the window next to the two of them. The two looked over there, too. Just now, Tori stood on the one side of Kawara Hakagusa, which gives out a beautiful outline of yellow and blue. He made a serious face and spread his hands. He was looking at the sky. I'm going there. I'm looking forward to it. That's right. I'm sure I'll catch a bird again. It would be nice if the bird could get off as soon as the train doesn't run. As soon as I said that, from the blue sky, a scrawny thing that I had just seen screamed like a snowfall, and I fell down a lot. Then, that Tori as if it were completely according to the order, stood with both legs open at 60 degrees, holding the black leg that shrank and came down from one side with both hands, and put it in the bag of the cloth. Then, the scourge, like a firefly, for a while in the bag, it was blue and shiny, and it was disappearing, but at the end, all of a sudden, everyone became white, and closed their eyes. However, Tori, who was caught by the scourge, was not caught, and it was more likely to get off safely on the sand on the Amano River. When I looked at it, whether my legs were stuck in the sand or not, it shrank and became flat, as if melting snow, and it was like a copper seal that came out of the lava, spreading on the sand and gravel, and for a while the shape of the bird was attached to the sand, but as it became 2 or 3 times brighter and darker, it became completely the same color as the surroundings. Tori, when he put only 20 birds in the bag, suddenly raised both hands, and the soldiers hit the gun, and it looked like it was about to die. When I thought about it, the shape of Tori had already disappeared there. Oh, it's alive. It's not a good thing to earn enough to fit in your body. A familiar voice was next to Giovanni's too. When he looked at it, Tori had already collected the scourge there, and put them together, one by one. Why did you come here all of a sudden from there? Giovanni asked with a strange feeling, as if it were something natural, as if it were not natural. Why did you come? I came because I was about to come. All of you, where are you coming from? Giovanni immediately tried to answer, but he could not think of where he came from. Campanella also turned his face bright red, and tried to remember something. Ah, it's from far away. Tori nodded carelessly, as if he had understood. 9. Giovanni's ticket. The ticket was given to Giovanni. 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 He begged Giovanni to leave it alone. It pisses us off. Where did you go? the ticket's been given to Giovanni. It's not a small surprise. If you're cute, just try to go home. Go to work. From here, the paralysis in your life, you can't stop feeling bad, but it's not that. Standing on all four sides, on one of the ceilings, two large, transparent balls of sapphire and topaz, which seemed to be awake, turned into a circle and turned around quietly. The yellow one gradually turned to the other side, and the small blue one went this way, and soon the two ends were overlapping, and a beautiful green double-sided lens was made, and gradually the middle bulged out, and finally the blue one came to the front of the topaz. Also, this time most of the two were turning, so the middle of the green was Otto, which was yellow and bright. It gradually turned sideways again, and the shape of the previous lens repeated itself in reverse, and finally generally separated. The sapphire goes over there, the yellow one goes this way, again, just as he did just after that, the type being turned coming out. And, there was no shape of the galaxy, and it was surrounded by water with no sound, and it was really quiet as if the black ship was sleeping. That is a machine that measures the speed of water. When Tori was about to say something, he looked at the ticket. The tall captain, wearing a red hat next to the three people in the seat, said that he was standing straight one day. Tori quietly pulled out a small piece of paper from the envelope. The captain looked at it for a moment, turned his eyes right away, and moved his fingers as if he were saying, "What about you?" and put his hand out towards Giovanni and the others. "Well?" Giovanni was troubled and mumbling, but Campanella said, "What is it? What is it?" The other three said, "I don't know." Then he put out a small mouse-colored ticket, saying that there was no way. Giovanni was completely nervous, and thought that it might have been in the pocket of his jacket, and when he put his hand in it, he noticed a big folded paper clip. I thought that something like this was in it, so I hurriedly took it out, and it was a green paper about the size of a postcard folded in four. When I handed it over thinking that I could do anything because the president was making a move, the president stood up straight and carefully opened it and looked at it. And while reading, he fixed the buttons of his coat or something, and the Todai officer also fixed the buttons of his coat or something, and he looked at it with passion from below, so when I first saw it, I thought that it was a certificate or something, and I felt a little hot in my chest. "Did you get this from the person in the three-way space?" the president asked. "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm safe again." I was relieved, but Giovanni looked up at that side and laughed. "Thank you. It will be the next 3:15 that I will arrive at Southern Cross." The president handed the paper to Giovanni and went over. Campanella hurriedly looked into it as if he had not been able to wait for what the paper cut was. Giovanni wanted to see it as soon as possible. However, when he looked at it silently, he felt like he was going to be sucked into it somehow. Then Tori glanced at it from the side, and hurriedly said, "This thing is a big deal. This thing is already a ticket to the real ceiling. It's not just the ceiling. It's a pass that you can open anywhere you want. If you have this, I see, you can open such an imperfect, like the Fourth Galaxy Railway. You guys are a big deal." "I don't know what it is." Giovanni turned red and answered, then folded it again and hid it. And because it was a bad idea, Campanella and the two were looking out the window again, but as if it was a big deal, they could see it in the dim light. Campanella said, "It's almost my stop," Campanella said, comparing the three small, yellowish triangles lined up on the other side, with the map. Giovanni, somehow, without knowing what it was, suddenly felt sorry for the Tori next to him, and couldn't help it. He grabbed the scourge and rejoiced that it had been created, and wrapped it in white thread, and looked at it sideways as if he had been surprised at the person's ticket, and hurriedly praised it. Thinking about such things one by one, Giovanni's things were already in the hands of the Tori, and he said to himself, "I want to do anything, whether it's what Giovanni has, or what he eats. If I can truly be a blessing to this person, I can stand on the scourge of that shining river, and continue to take the Tori for 100 years. I feel like that, and I can't help but be silent anymore." "Really, what is it that you want?" he asked. Then, thinking about what to do, he looked back, and there was no longer that Tori there. On top of the scourge, there was a piece of paper, and on top of it, there was a piece of paper, and on top of it, there was a piece of paper, and on top of it, there was a piece of paper, and he found another piece of paper, and inside the paper was as white as snow. When again, that is where he saw nothing, he opened Tori Tori and gave her a little commiseration. I couldn't see his long back or his pointed hat. Where did that person go? Campanella also said so. Where did he go? Where on earth will we meet again? Why didn't I tell him anything a little more? Oh, I think so too. I felt like that person was in the way. So I am very pained. Giovanni said, it's really the first time I've ever felt like this, and I've never said anything like this before. It smells like an apple. Maybe it's because I'm thinking about apples now. Campanella looked around mysteriously. It really smells like an apple. And it smells like a rose. Giovanni looked around, and it seemed that it would come in from the window. It's autumn now, so there's no way it smells like a rose. So, Giovanni thought. Then, there was a shiny, black-haired boy with only 6 hairs. He didn't even wear a red jacket button, and he had a terrible, surprised face. He was shaking and standing barefoot. Next to him was a young man in black clothes. He was as tall as a tree with a lot of wind, and he was holding his boy's hand firmly. Oh, where is this place? Well, it's beautiful. Behind the young man, there was a pretty girl with brown eyes, only 12 years old. She was wearing a black coat, leaning on the young man's arm, and looking out the window mysteriously. Oh, this is Lancashire. No, it's Connecticut. No. Oh, we came to the sky. We are going to heaven. Look! That mark is the mark of heaven. There is nothing to be afraid of anymore. We are being guided by God. And so the young man, baggy as his shirt, and his body was pulled back. As he fell asleep, he looked over, then he gently pointed at the next seat of Campanella to the girl. The girl sat down and put her hands together. I'm going to my sister. The boy, who had just put his hands together, turned his face and said to the young man who was just sitting in the other seat of Campanella. The young man made a sad face without saying anything and looked at the girl's wrinkled and wet head. The girl suddenly put her hands on her face. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The girl looked at the young man and said, I'm going to my sister. The young man gently said to his brothers as if he were teaching them. We have nothing to be sad about anymore. We will travel to such a good place and go to God's place soon. There, it will be really bright, smell good, and full of great people. And instead of us, the people who got on the boat will surely be saved by everyone, and they will go to their father and mother in their own home, who are worried and waiting. Well, it's almost time, so let's cheer up and sing fun songs. The young man stroked the black hair of the boy's wet hair and comforted everyone. Gradually, his face started to shine. Where did you come from? Where did you come from? How did you get here? The captain of the lighthouse asked the young man as if he had finally understood a little. The young man laughed slightly. No. The boat sank when it collided with the iceberg. But we thought we had arrived somewhere far away. When we arrived at the station, Gatsugochi-han forget everything. Father is out but mother wants to come home and is very busy. At that time, the old man had returned home from school. 2 months ago, that's when, we seem to have urgently found the father here, so we arrived late. 2 months are early and 1 step early to return home, so we often made it. The moonlight was dim somewhere, but the fog was very deep. However, the boat was already half of the way down, so it was very difficult to get out of the boat. By then, the boat had sunk, and I was desperate, and I cried out, please put the small people on board. The people nearby immediately opened the road, and the children were on board. The children were on board. They were praying for us. However, there were still small children and parents in the boat, and I wasn't very brave enough to push them out. but I thought it was my duty to help them, but rather than doing that again and helping them, I thought that it would be really a blessing for these people to go to God as they are all together. After that, I expected God to think that I would be alone to bring back all the sins I put away and wanted to help. However, I found that I couldn't do that. I let my children sail in the boat alone. Mom kissed me like a Valverde jacket? And then, it seemed that my stomach was about to be torn off, such as standing straight and holding back the sadness of my father, and the ship was sinking more and more in the meantime, so I was already prepared, and I held the two of them, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and the ship sank as much as it could float, and so the wind came bare. We talked about the place where it became a star, and the three of us firmly attached to it. From nowhere, the voice rose. Everyone sang it in various languages at once. At that time, it made a very loud sound, and we fell into the water and thought that we had already entered the abyss, but when we held these people firmly and then thought that they had gone, we were already here. The mother of these people passed away the day before yesterday. Yes. They must have been saved by the boat. After all, the more mature sailors arrived early, so they were fast on their way to the boat. From there, I heard a small prayer, and Giovanni and Campanella remembered all the things they had forgotten so far, and I couldn't stop looking at them. Oh, wasn't that big sea Pacific? On a small boat in the northern end of the sea where the iceberg flows, someone is working hard to fight against the wind, freezing salt water, and intense cold, and the sea is full of ice. I feel really sorry for that person, and I feel like I'm sorry. What should I do for the sake of that person's happiness? Giovanni was choked to death and completely locked up. I don't know what happiness is. No matter how hard it is, if it's a good thing to walk the right path, everyone will get closer to true happiness up and down the mountain pass, one step at a time. The lighthouse forest was comforting. Oh, that's right. Hey, ask him about how he felt because he was trying to get closer to the sea, and he got me. That's right, he was very happy. I can't even tell you in my mind. I'm sorry. Give us some tea, he. There's no tea, he. Did everyone get in? No. On his bare feet, he was once wearing white, soft shoes. One by one, the night advanced through the shiny river bank. When he looked out of the window, the river bank was like a fairy tale. There were hundreds and thousands of large and small triangles. On top of the big one, he saw a red dot patterned bat. At the end of the riverbank, there were many, many of them. They gathered like a blue-yellow fog. From there, or from the other side, sometimes various shapes like a blurry cloud were shot up into the changing, beautiful, rare-colored sky. In fact, the beautiful wind that passed through them was full of the scent of roses. What do you think? This is the first time I've seen an apple like this. The guard of the lighthouse on the other side, in order not to drop the big apple, which was once beautifully colored in gold and beignet, was holding it on his knees with both hands. Oh, where did you come from? It's great. Is it possible to make such an apple here? The young man was really surprised. A pile of apples, held in the hands of the lighthouse guard, a pile of apples. He was looking at me, with his eyes narrowed and his neck bent, forgetting to look at me. Well, please take it. Please, well, take it. The young man took one and looked a little at Giovanni and the others. Well, over there, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Please take it. Giovanni was called a little girl, so he touched it a little and kept quiet, but Campanella said, "Thank you." Then the young man took it by himself, and sent it to the two of them one by one, so Giovanni stood up and said thank you. The lighthouse guard finally opened his arms, so this time he gently put it on his sleeping brother's knees one by one. Thank you very much. But this is a little girl's apple, so I won't take it. You can take it. Where can you do it? Such a fine apple. The young man looked at it and said, "Of course, I will do agriculture in this area, but it is a promise that you can usually do something good by yourself." Agriculture doesn't break bones that much. If you lose even the seeds you usually want, they will come out more and more on your own. Rice doesn't have shells like Pacific, and it's 10 times bigger and smells good. But if you're here, there's no more agriculture. Apples and sweets don't have any shells, so they all smell a little different depending on each person, and they scatter them from the tree hole. Suddenly, a boy opened his eyes and said, "Oh, I just opened my eyes and said, oh, 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 I just opened my eyes." And said, "Oh, I just opened my eyes and said, I just opened my eyes and said, oh, 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 I just opened my eyes and said." He looked at me, put his hand out, and smiled, smiling, smiling. I said, "Mom, let's go pick up an apple," and I woke up. "Oh, this is in the train earlier. The apple is there. I got it from this old man." The young man said, "Thank you, old man. Oh, Sister Kaoru is still sleeping. I'll wake you up. Sister, look. I got an apple. Wake up." Sister woke up with a smile, put her hands on her eyes, and then looked at the apple. The boy was already eating it as if he were eating a pie. Also, the beautiful skin he had peeled off, it was like a round cork. While he was about to fall to the floor, it shone gray and evaporated. The two carefully put the apple in his pocket. On the other side of Kawashimo, I saw a big green forest. The branches were ripe and bright red, full of round fruit. In the middle of the forest, a tall, tall triangle stood up. From the forest, it was mixed with orchestra bells and cellophane. I can't say anything, it stood there like this. I looked up in the air. And it was there. This trough, it stood on its feet like the first blow of Athena. It was a deep, light sound, a deep blue, a second sound from the circle of my spiritual hands. Where it puts its strength in strength, though I could hear it, the sound of this trough is warm, good, and soft, a light green light-colored field or food spread, and a white wool-like dew seemed to cover the surface of the sun. Well, that crow. A girl named Kaoru, next to Campanella, shouted. "It's not a crow. It's all grasshoppers." Campanella again said in a casual way, so Giovanni laughed again, and the girl said, "I think it's a crow." On top of the completely blue-green light of the river, there were a lot of blackbirds, lined up in a row, and they were constantly receiving the beauty of the river. "It's a grasshopper. Behind the head, the hair is stretched out," the young man said as if he were a bird. The triangle in the blue forest over there, came right in front of the train. At that time, all the way behind the train, the bird was parked Kiki. After this, returning to T. Sullivan, I couldn't understand him. Didn't he hear a bird's class together? I didn't know all songs, but I had a bright dream, but I thought it was a red bird. Kaoru sat down again. Kaoru put a half cloth on his face. Even Giovanni's nose became strange. But the song was sung out without anyone knowing it, and it became stronger and stronger. Unknowingly, Giovanni and Campanella sang it out together. And then, beyond the invisible Lano River, the sound of the mysterious instrument that flows from there, gradually going back as it lights up and goes, was already reduced to the sound of the train and the sound of the wind, and it became faint all the time. Giovanni said, "Oh, there is a crumple." Giovanni said, "Oh, there is a crumple." "Yes, there are a lot of them." The girl answered. Giovanni became smaller and smaller, and now he was on top of the forest that looked like a green sea button, and it was already blue and sometimes shining, and the crumple spread its wings and closed the reflection of the light. "That's right. I heard the crumple's voice just now." Campanella said to Kaoru, "Yes, there were about 30 of them. It sounded like a herb. Everyone is crumpled. The girl answered. Giovanni felt sorry for no reason, and thought, Campanella, let's fly down from here and play. He tried to say it with a scary face. The river was divided into two. In the middle of the pitch-black island, a tall yagura was built, and on top of that, wearing one loose clothes, a man wearing a red hat was standing. And he was holding a red and blue flag in both hands, looking up at the sky and signaling. While Giovanni was looking at it, the man was waving a red flag at a distance, but he suddenly lowered the red flag, hiding it behind him, and raised the blue flag high and high, like a conductor of an orchestra, and shook it violently. Then, in the air, there was a sound like rain, and something pitch black was coming and going, like a cannonball, flying towards the other side of the river. Giovanni, without thinking, took out half of his body from the window, and looked up at it. Under the beautiful, pitch black sky, there were actually many small birds, yani bilingual birds. Many small birds were being slowly passing by. The birds flew away. Then, Giovanni said outside the window, at that time, the man in the loose clothes on the yagura raised the red flag in a strange way and shook it like a madman. Then, the flock of birds did not pass by, and at the same time, a crushed sound called pishan occurred at the bottom of the river, and then it was silent for a while. When I thought about it, that red-headed traffic light was again waving a blue flag and screaming. Now it's time to cross the river, cross the river. Now it's time to cross the river, cross the river. I could hear that voice clearly. From the window in the middle where they were facing each other, that girl was looking up at the sky with her beautiful cheeks. Well, there are a lot of birds. Oh my, how beautiful the sky is. The girl talked to Giovanni, but Giovanni, while thinking that he was lazy and did not like it, quietly closed his mouth and looked up at the sky. The girl took a small breath and quietly returned to her seat. Campanella looked at the map with a sad face from the window. Is that person teaching birds? The girl was gently asking Campanella. The girl was quietly asking Campanella. A hottie cares for a honey bee. And the inside of the car became a dead end. Giovanni wanted to pull his head back, but it was hard to show his face to the bright place, so he stood still and blew a whistle. Why am I so sad? I have to hold my heart bigger and bigger. I can see a small blue light like smoke all the way over there. It's really quiet and cold. I often look at that and calm my heart. Giovanni tried to hold his head with both hands and looked over there. Oh, really? I wonder if there is anyone who will go with me anywhere. Campanella is also talking to that woman in a funny way. I'm really tired. Giovanni's eyes were full of tears again, and the river of rain seemed to go far away. It just looked white. At that time, the train was gradually moving away from the river and passing over the cliff. The black cliff on the other side also gradually became higher and higher as it went down the river. Then I saw a big corn tree. The leaves of the corn tree were wrinkled, and under the leaves there was already a beautiful green large one with red hair and a pearl-like fruit. It gradually increased in number, and now it looks like a row. It is lined up among the cliff and the track like a row. When Giovanni pulled his face out of the window and looked at the window on the other side, the big corn tree was planted on almost the same side of the beautiful sky until the end of the horizon. It swayed in the wind. From the tip of the leaf, which shrank beautifully from the wind in the wind, it was as if it had sucked a lot of sunflowers during the day, and it had a lot of dew, and it was red and green and glittering and shining. Campanella said to Giovanni, "That's corn, isn't it?" But Giovanni couldn't help but feel better, so he just looked at Nohara and answered, "That's right." At that time, the train was getting quieter and quieter, passing through some signals and the lights of the tram, and stopped at a small stop. The blue and yellow clock in front of it clearly indicates the 2 o'clock, and the Furico shows that there is no wind and the train does not move, and Catherine mainly section 06 the swinging sound flashed like a throbbing thread from the far future Nohara's end. But this sound, after years, that sound has become quite difficult here. The frustrated Ornibalshing season results in falling over the land completely. Capitanella shin sekai kocho raku dawa, ane ga, hitorigoto no yoni kochi ominagara sotoi mashi tamataku, mokuruma no nakadewa, Ano kurofuku no kotakai sanin modare momi na yasashi yumeo, miteiru no deshi tako na shizuka na itokoro de boku wa doshite, moto yukai ni nare nyandaro doshite kona ni hitori, sabishi no daro kareto kampanero ra nanka amari hidoi. Boku toi sho ni chisha ni no te nagara maru de ana onna no, koto bakari hanashi te irunda mono boku wa honto ni tsurai, jobani wa mata ryote de kao o hanbun kakusu yo nishi te, muko no mato no soto o mitsume te imashita, tsuchito tagarasu no yona fue ganat te chishawa shizuka ni, ugochi dashi kampanero ra mosabishi so ni hoshi meguru no yoni mieta. Kuchibue o fuchimashi tamo kono henwa, hidoi kogen desu kara, ushiro no kata de dare katoshiori rashi hido no ima megasame tatoyu, fude hachi hachi banashi oshite irukoi gashimashita, tomoro koshida te, ima megasame tatoyu fude hachi hachi banashi oshite irukoi ga, shimashi tabo de ni shaku mo ana o ake te oite, soko e machi. Kanai tohai nine desu so desu kakawa made wa yohodo, ari masho kane, e kawamade wa nisen shaku kara roku sen shaku ari masu momaride, hidoi chokoku ni nate irun desu so koko wa, koorado no kogenja nakataro kajabani wa omowazu so, omoi mashi takampanero rawa, matasabishi so ni ichi jinko bueo fuji. Onano ko wamaru de chinu de tsutsunda ringo no yonakawiro oshite, jabanyu no miru hoomite iru no desuga, onano ko wamaru de chinu de tsutsunda ringo no yonakawiro oshite, jabanyu no miru hoomite iru no deshi totsuzen tamura koshiga, nakunate ochina kuroi no haraga ipai ni akemashita, shinsekai kocho gaku wa yo hachiri chihei sen no hate kara, wachi. Sonoma kura na nohara no naka o hitori no indian gashiroi, tori no hane o atama ni tsuke no desu kuroi tori no hane o atama ni, tsuke no desu, aratakusan no ishi o ude tomune ni kazari chisana yumiya o, tsugai te ichimokusan ni chisha o te kuru no deshita ara, indian desu yomi te, otokono koge mashita. Oto konoko ge mashita kurofuku no sanen mo meotsuke nagara, jampu oshite modot te chita no desu sanen mo meotsuke to no desu, kurofuku no sanen mo meotsuke to no desu ara indian desu yomi te Giovanni and Campanella also got up. It's coming. Oh, it's coming. You're chasing it, aren't you? No, I'm not chasing the train. I'm counting or dancing. The young man said as if he had forgotten where he was now, putting his hand in his pocket and standing. It seemed that half of the Indians were dancing at all. Even if it was the first time, it seemed that stepping on his feet would make him more economical and serious. The white wings suddenly fell forward, and the Indians stopped and quickly pulled the bow into the sky. From there, a pair of turns fluttered, and the Indian, who had started running again, fell into the hands of the two large hands. The Indian looked happy and laughed. And with a crane, the shadow looking at us is getting smaller and farther away, and the Indian's tail is shining brightly, and the two are glowing, and it becomes a cornfield again. Looking at the window on this side, the train is really running on a high cliff, and at the bottom of the valley, the river was still flowing widely and brightly. Yes, it's already around here. Anyway, this time I'm going to go all the way down to that surface, so it's not easy. Because there is this slope, the train will never come from the other side. Well, it's getting faster and faster, isn't it? The old man's voice said earlier. Gradually, the train went down. When the railroad was on the edge of the cliff, the river was bright and I could look down. Gradually, Giovanni's mind became brighter and brighter. When the train passed through a small hut and a child stood in front of it, when he was looking over here, he shouted without thinking. Gradually, the train ran. The people in the room were half falling back, he was firmly clinging to his waist. Giovanni didn't think about it. I can't even speak to it anymore, or wouldn't I be able to eat and drink anymore? The night was running slowly as if he had finally calmed down. On the other side and on this side of the bridge, a flag with the shape of a star and a pickaxe was standing. What kind of flag is that? Giovanni finally said something. Well, I don't know. There is no map. there's an iron ship. Isn't it a place where you can cross the bridge? The girl said. In the middle of the night she looked at the image of a white bat's flag. Oh, that's a white bat flag. They are practicing martial arts. But I can't see the situation. At that moment, a little upper river near the Marines, the water on the likes of the Amano River that cannot be seen shone. It jumped up high like a pillar and made a loud, loud sound. It's a leaf. It's a leaf. Campanella took a deep breath. The water that had become like a pillar was invisible, but a large leaf in a mass shone brightly and whitely on its belly, and it was thrown out into the air, drawing a round circle, and fell into the water again. Giovanni said that his feelings had become so light that he wanted to jump up. It's the Kohei Deitai of the sky. How is it? The moss or something has become like this and has been lifted up. I have never had such a pleasant journey. Nice? If it's that moss, if you look closely, it's about this much. There are a lot of fish in this water. Are there any small fish? The girl was caught up in the story. There must be. There are big ones, so there must be small ones. But it's far, so I couldn't see the small ones now. Giovanni was already in a good mood, and he laughed interestingly and answered the girl. That must be the Omiya of the twin stars. The boy suddenly pointed out the window and shouted. On the low hill on his right hand, there were two Omiyas that looked like a small crystal. What is the Omiya of the twin stars? Giovanni said. I asked my mother many times before. There are two Omiyas in a small crystal. They are lined up on the ground, so it must be. Talk to me. What did the twin stars do? I don't know either. The twin stars went out to the field to play and fought with the crows, right? No, that's not it. I talked to the knight of the Amano River, my mother. Then the phoenix said, Gee gee foo. I don't like it. Dad, it's not like that. That's another one. Then he said to Giovanni, Are you blowing a whistle over there now? I'm going to the sea now. I can't go. He's already come up from the sea. Yeah, I know. Let's talk. The other side of the river suddenly turned red. The trees in something in Unagi were exposed to the black, and the waves of the Amano River, which are not visible, sometimes shone red like a needle. On the other side of the river, there was a big red flame, and the black smoke seemed to burn the high, dark-colored, cold sky. It was redder than ruby, and it seemed to be more beautiful than lithium, and that fire was on fire. What kind of fire is that? What kind of fire can you burn on such a red-lit day? Giovanni said. It's a scorpion fire. Campanella again nodded and answered. Oh, I know about the scorpion fire. What is the scorpion fire? Giovanni asked. The scorpion burned and died. I've heard from my father many times that the fire is still burning. The scorpion is a bug, isn't it? Yes, the scorpion is a bug. But it's a good bug. The scorpion is not a good bug. I saw it on alcohol at the museum. There is such a key in the fire, and the teacher said that if you are stabbed by it, you will die. The teacher said. Yes, the scorpion is a good bug. Yes, but it's a good bug. This is what your father said. There used to be a scorpion in the field of the Paldora, and they were killing and eating small bugs and stuff. Then one day, I was found by a field and was about to be eaten. The scorpion ran away with all its might, but finally it seemed to be able to hold back its wrath. At that time, suddenly there was a well in front of it, and it fell into it. The scorpion began to drown without being able to get up again. At that time, the scorpion prayed like this, Oh, I don't know how many lives I've taken so far. And when I was about to be taken by the scorpion this time, I ran away so hard. But finally it became like this, Oh, I can't do anything about it. Why didn't I give my body to the scorpion in silence? Then the scorpion survived for a day. Please, God, look at my heart. It's so empty. It's so empty. It's so empty. It's so empty. How many more fish can I catch? Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. I act like a farmer. Let's go home now. What, honey, don't you matter, baby? Do you understand? What should we do? I feel sad. It's funny. I didn't want to be doused from the fish from today. High blood pressure. Very stale matter. Who? Dedication. Don't you understand? Oh, honey, don't tell me what to do. Help me, help me, help me. Oh my, it's so rude. Honey, Wyklobera. Flush? I want to give you my life. But, how many lives have you lost? Can I continue? My father said that it was still burning. It was really that day. That's right, look. The triangles there are lined up in the shape of a scorpion. On the other side of the big fire, there were 3 triangles just like a scorpion's arm. Here, I saw 5 triangles lined up like a scorpion's tail or a key. And then, there was a beautiful, pearly beautiful red Ali's battle. However, people lost sight of this beautiful fire while the Lida, which was already on fire, was burning when cherry blossoms met one another. Then, people quickly lit red lights and it felt like there was a town or something nearby, and there was a festival there. The boy next to Giovanni, who had been sleeping all this time, was screaming as he looked out the window over there. Oh, there was a Christmas tree, like a Christmas tree, and there were a lot of flowers in it. Oh, there was a Christmas tree, like a Christmas tree, and there were a lot of flowers in it. The boy next to Giovanni, who had been sleeping all this time, was screaming as he looked out the window over there. Oh, there was a Christmas tree, like a Christmas tree, and there were a lot of flowers in it. The boy next to Giovanni, who had been sleeping all this time, was screaming as he looked out the window over there. If it's a ball throw, I'll never miss it. The boy said with a big stick. It's about time for the Southern Cross. Please prepare to get off. The young man said to everyone. I want to get on the train a little more. The boy said. The girl next to Campanella started to get up and get ready, but she didn't want to part with Giovanni after all. You have to get off here. The boy clenched his teeth tightly and looked down at the boy. I don't want to. I'm going to get on the train a little more. Giovanni looked at him and said. Let's get on the train together. Let's get on the train together. We have a ticket to go anywhere. But we have to get off here. This is where we go to the ceiling. The girl said in a lonely voice. You don't have to go to the ceiling. We have to go to a better place than the ceiling here. My teacher said. Because my mother says so. And God says so. Such a God is a false God. Your God is also a false God. That's not true. What kind of God is your God? The boy laughed and said. I don't really know. But it's not like that. It's the only real God. The real God is, of course, the only one. The boy said. Oh, it's not like that. It's the only real God. It's the real God. That's why it's not like that. I pray that you will meet us in front of the real God now. The boy held his hands together. The girl did just that. I almost did not expect God to bully me. But I do not respect it. It seems that I am not really that kind to the real God. Who comes to you and not to fight for you, and I feel that you are only the be with me. Although I have ever brought you chopping, you have something. It was that time. In the river bank of the invisible river, the cross, which was scattered with all kinds of light, such as blue and diamond, shone from the river as if it were a single tree, and on top of it, a blue-yellow cloud turned into a round ring and hung over the river bank. The inside of the train was as if shaking. Everyone started to pray standing straight like at that time of the North Cross. I could only hear the voice of joy like when a child jumped into a river, and I could only hear the sound of a deep sigh that had nothing to say. And gradually, the cross came in front of the window, and the blue-yellow cloud, like the flesh of that apple, slowly turned around. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Everyone's voices echoed brightly and joyously, and from far away in the sky, from far away in the cold sky, everyone heard the sound of a clear, refreshing rap. And then, in the midst of all kinds of signals and traditional lights, the train gradually became more and more gentle, and finally it stopped just in time for the cross. Now, it was time for the cross to come out. The boy took the boy's hand and gradually started walking towards the exit over there. Well, then, goodbye. The girl turned around and said to the two of them. Goodbye. There is no ware wa, mochi goodbye. 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 Goodbye for life ever, for life. And so, the boy kept looking back at his year and his two sisters. Then, he shot a bullet into this bag for material Natomiast in the train. More than half of it was empty, and I felt lonely, and the wind blew a lot. And when I looked at it, everyone was in a row, kneeling on the banks of the Amano River in front of that cross. And crossing the water of the invisible Amano River, one of the white kimono men reached out his hand and said, and the train started to move. And as I thought, a silver mist came flowing from the river bank, and I could not see anything more. The golden walnut tree shined its leaves and stood in the mist, and the golden light stick looked at its cute face from the mist. At that time, a fog started to rise. It looked like a highway going somewhere, and there was a path with a small traditional line. It was going along the track for a while. And when the two of them passed in front of the sign, the small bean-colored fire disappeared like a greeting, and when the two passed by, it came again. Looking back, the cross just now became completely small, and it looked like it was going to hang on my chest as it was. It's not big, but it's hard to tie it with anything. Quite smooth in texture. The white cross I brought you just before was growing again. I may come closer. No matter what you do, I'll do it. Banco people who keep thinking. Campanella, let's go anywhere, anywhere together. I'm already like that scorpion, if it's really for the sake of everyone's happiness, I don't care if my body is burned 100 times. I'm like that too, ooh. The eyes of Campanella were filled with beautiful tears. But what is true happiness? Giovanni said. I don't know. Campanella said. I don't know. Campanella said. Let's do it well. Giovanni said with a full chest and new power, breathing. Oh, that's a coal bag. It's a hole in the sky. It's a hole in the sky. Campanella was a little bit away from it. I pointed at the people on the side of the river. Giovanni looked over there and was almost stunned. The people on the side of the river have a big, pitch black hole. It's open. The bottom of the hole is so deep. What's in the back of it? No matter how much I rub my eyes and look at it, I can't see anything. It was just that my eyes hurt deeply. Giovanni said. I'm already like that scorpion, if it's really for the sake of everyone's happiness, I don't care if my body is burned 100 times. I don't know. 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 I'm fine with going around in the depths of darkness like that. Surely we're going to find everyone's true happiness. To all of us, no matter how far you go together. Hear that, I think we'll be able to go. That's it? Yeah, that's what becomes the other side there. What are we sitting at? Yeah, now we're going. How dare you say that with him, your Hannah would beat you once. It's so beautiful. Everyone is gathered. That's the real ceiling. Oh, that's my mother. Campanella screamed at the beautiful field that looked so far away from the window. Giovanni also looked over there, but it was just white and foggy, and he didn't seem to have gone to Campanella. I felt so lonely that I couldn't say anything. When I looked over there, I saw two electric poles on the other side of the river, and they were standing with red armbands as if they had joined their arms from both sides. Campanella, let's go together. Giovanni said this, and when he looked back, he saw that Campanella's seat was already in the shape of Campanella, but it was just a black billboard shining. Giovanni stood up like a cannonball. And so that no one could hear him, he got out of the window and got on his feet, screaming with all his might, and then he started to cry out loud. He thought that it was already pitch black. Giovanni opened his eyes. He was tired and asleep in the grass on the hill. He was pleased with himself, so he smiled. He did his best all the way to the back. A huge bolt of light looked like a cannon. It seemed that it was warmer than before. And the Amano River, which I just walked in my dreams, is still as white and blurry as before, and on the black southern horizon, it seems to have become smoky, and it seems to have become dark. And on the right, the red stars of Scorpius are beautifully shining, and the overall position of the sky seems to have not changed so much. Giovanni ran down the hill in a hurry. He remembered his mother, who was still waiting for him to eat dinner. He remembered his mother, who was still waiting for him to eat dinner. He remembered his mother, who was still waiting for him to eat dinner. He passed through the black pine forest, then went around the yellow-colored ranch, and came back to the dark cowherd from the entrance. He came back to the dark cowherd from the entrance. It seems that someone has just returned there. There was one car that wasn't there earlier. There was one car that wasn't there earlier. There was one car that wasn't there earlier. But there was someone wanted to come to see me. But I just stored only the X den juntos. But I just stored only the X den juntos. But I just stored only the X den juntos. I thought, and then Isa had after him, and Isa cried to him. Yes, it's true. He who wore white and thick trousers immediately came out and stood up. He who wore white and thick trousers immediately came out and stood up. What do you need for? Milk didn't come to my place today, but I'm sorry. The person went straight to the back and brought a bottle of milk and handed it over to Giovanni. I'm really sorry. I went to my father-in-law's place and drank only half of it today because I was in a hurry this afternoon and left it open. The person laughed. Is that so? Then I'll take it. Yes, I'm really sorry. No. Giovanni held the hot father's bottle in his hands and went out to the ranch. After a while, he passed through a tree-like town, went out to the main street, and went out again for a while. The road became a crossroad, and on the right side, off the street, there was a large bridge that went to the river to flow the light of Campanella and the others just now. It was standing in the night sky. However, in front of the street corner and the shop at 10 o'clock in the morning, the road was blocked. The road was blocked. In the middle of Michibata ni, Onatachi ga Nanahachi Ningurai Zutsu Atsumate, I watched the end of the road, and I'm quietly talking about something. And then over the verge of bridge, there were many lights. There are so many lights. I was so surprised. Suddenly, I asked the people around me if something had happened, and they shouted. The child fell into the river. When one person said it, they all looked at Giovanni at the same time. Giovanni ran to the end of the river as if he were immersed in it. There were so many people on the bridge that I could not see the river. There was also a gentleman in white clothes. Giovanni came down to the wide river below as if he were flying from the edge of the bridge. Along the waterbed of the river, many lights were rising and falling in a hurry. There were 7 lights on the dark side of the other side of the river. There were 7 lights on the dark side of the other side. There were 7 lights on the dark side of the river. The river with no more light had a slightly louder sound and flowed silently. The river with no more light had a slightly louder sound and flowed quietly. When I went out into the riverbank, where the crowd of people was standing all dark, Giovanni ran over there more and more. Then Giovanni met Marceau, who was with Campanella earlier. Marceau ran over to Giovanni. Giovanni and Campanella went into the river. Why? When? Zanelli tried to push the light of the crowbar from above the ship towards the direction of the water. At that time, the ship was shaken, so it fell into the water, right? Then Campanella said. Campanella immediately jumped in. Then he pushed Zanelli towards the ship. Zanelli was caught by Gatto. But I can't see Campanella. Everyone is looking for him, right? Oh, everyone came right away. Campanella's father also came. But I can't find him. Zanelli was taken to the house. Giovanni went over there where everyone was. There were students and the people of the town. Campanella's father, who had a blue, pointed chin, stood straight up in black clothes and stared at the clock in his right hand. Everyone was staring at the river. No one said a word. There was no one to say anything. Giovanni's legs trembled with excitement. When the fish were caught, the acetylene lamps were very busy. The black river water raised a small wave and could be seen flowing. The river flow was full of river width. The galaxy was reflected greatly. It looked as if there was no water. It looked like the sky as it was. Giovanni felt that Campanella was no longer out of that galaxy, and there was no choice. Because he was loosely watched. But everyone was still there. From some waves I swam a long time. I waited for someone to come. Campanella should come. It was impossible to be waiting for someone to come from somewhere in a corner of the original looking vault of others who did not know. So it was the fate of them. So it was the fate of them. So it was the fate of them. But unfortunately, Campanella's father said, It's no good anymore. It's been 45 minutes since I fell. Giovanni ran to the doctor without thinking. I know where Campanella went. I was walking with Campanella. I tried to say it, but my throat was clogged and I couldn't say anything. Then the doctor thought that Giovanni had come to greet him. For a while, I was looking at Campanella and Giovanni. You were Giovanni, weren't you? Good evening. Thank you. He said politely. Giovanni said nothing and just peed. Is your father already home? The doctor held his watch tightly and asked. No. Giovanni shook his head slightly. What's wrong? He said he couldn't brighten his eyes. And he said he had trouble breathing. Giovanni said, Guardians of the Zot input did not respond to me. Joan paper. Did you come home, master? You said it's not right to send an ambulance. Why you have no mutual respect with your mother? So the doctor again turned to the side full of the galaxy in Kawashimo and looked at it. Giovanni was already full of various things, and he could not say anything, and he left in front of the doctor, but soon he went to his mother with milk and tried to let her know that his father was going home, and he ran to the city in a flash. The end.